Hi, I'm Nicole Klungel with Together We Will, Cincinnati and Southwest Ohio. Thank you for joining us tonight. I am here with Julia Collier. She is a candidate for Hamilton County Municipal Judge. As usual, we are streaming this not only to Together We Will's public page and other pages, but also to Together We Will East Cincinnati, United We Stand, and Indivisible Cincinnati for All. So I'm just going to give a little bit of more information about Together We Will while we're waiting for all of those people to connect their feeds to ours. I wanted to let you know that if you wanted to ask a question tonight about municipal courts, about Julia's campaign in particular, about how things work, please do. All you have to do is click on the video feed and type your question in the comments. We have somebody behind the scenes here who will see the comment and relay it to me on my computer here, and I will stop and I will ask. If you are also a candidate for municipal judge or a member of their campaign staff, we would like you to hold off on your questions, but everybody else, bring it on. We do have other Q&A events coming up. This week, look for additional Q&As with municipal court candidates. We are interviewing Cincinnati Public School Board of Education candidates. And in mid-August, Mayor Cranley will be with us, and then we will follow up with Yvette Simpson. So please stay tuned for announcements about those events. You can either find those event announcements on our public Together We Will Facebook page, or on Twitter. We're at TWWSWOH. And we have a YouTube channel, so of course we don't broadcast live to YouTube, but all of our finished Q&A sessions will be posted there. Again, just search for TWWSWOH and you'll find it. Remember to like our Facebook page. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel for updates. And that is how you find us. Usually we have gracious interpreters with us from Cincinnati State, but they weren't able to make it this evening. So I will try to transcribe tonight's Q&A session and put the transcription up when we post this video. I'm going to check behind the scenes and see how we're doing on linking. Getting there? Okay. Let me just repeat that if you would like to ask a question, all you have to do is click on the video feed and type in your question in the comments, and it will be relayed to me here. Don't hesitate, and if you have a follow-up question, please bring it on. All right, I'm going to introduce Julia. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you for
really
having
appreciate
me.
it.
Thank you.
If you are looking for Julia's website, you will find it at collierforjudge.com, and that's for spelled out F-O-R, not the number. And she's also on Facebook at Collier for Judge if you're looking. And she has a YouTube channel also searchable by Collier for Judge, so that's all very straightforward. And I believe that's going to be posted in the comments, the YouTube channel link. She is a candidate in the 7th District, which includes part of Price Hill, Delhi, Addiston, North Bend, Cleves, Miami Whitewater, Crosby, Ross, and Harrison, right?
Right.
So that's the district in which you would be elected.
Yes, the westernmost part of Hamilton
Westernmost
County.
part. Yep, and it kind of
Right.
arcs
Yes.
under. Yeah, it's a little weird. Okay. She has almost 30 years of experience as an attorney and a litigator. She's licensed to practice law in the state of Ohio and in the U.S. District Court of Southern Ohio, which
Right.
is a bigger
It's federal.
jurisdiction than, yeah,
Right.
okay. She has a BS from the University of Dayton, and her JD is from UC's College of Law. You have even been an Assistant Attorney General of Ohio.
Yes.
All right. You've worked for the American Federation of Government Employees.
Yes.
You have to tell us more about what that entailed. And you've been in private practice, of course. And you've worked for the Cincinnati Insurance Companies. That's a company name?
Yes.
Okay. I haven't heard of that, but now I have. And you have handled every aspect of litigation, from when clients walk in the door all the way through trial and sometimes appeal.
Right.
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. And you've worked as both defense and prosecution, is that correct?
Not
also?
prosecution. I've represented plaintiffs and defendants, so
I
have
see.
sat
Okay.
on both sides of the table, represented people on both sides of the table.
Okay, I'm glad you clarified that for me. I wasn't sure. Okay, thank you. All right. And I'm going to now let Julia introduce herself and tell us a little bit more about her campaign.
I am Julia Collier, and I'm running for the 7th District Municipal Court Judge. I've been an Assistant Attorney General, had my own private practice, and I'm sorry, that's my puppy in the background. He's been quiet until now. I also worked at Legal Aid Society, so I've handled cases for people all the way from indigent people all the way to state agencies in my years of practice. I had a broad range of practice and types of cases I've handled. I've handled domestic relations cases at Legal Aid involving domestic abuse, domestic violence, divorces, some juvenile court issues, done labor, the federal sector labor that I did for the American Federation of Government Employees. Back then when I worked for AFGE, as it was called, or as it is called, people would ask where I live, and I said I-71. I was just traveling all the way, all over. I was going all over Ohio and for different federal agencies, and also because I was a national representative, I was also going to Indiana and Kentucky as well. But I handled all sorts of labor issues, mediations, arbitrations, impasses, contract negotiations, midterm agreement negotiations, represented people with different employment issues as well. So it kind of runs the gamut of the cases I've handled.
Very cool. And is this your first run for office?
Yes.
Oh, very brave. All right. Shall we jump into questions?
Sure.
Okay. The first question is pretty general. What would you like voters to know about what municipal judges actually do?
Municipal court judges handle cases that involve generally misdemeanors, so up to 6 months in jail, and also controversies involving $500 to $15,000. So cases like a tree falls on your fence, car accidents, breaking and entering, things like that. Those are the types of cases a municipal court judge handles. And it's a very fast-paced court.
All right.
Cases.
That sounds like a mix of criminal offenses and civil.
That's
Is that
correct.
accurate?
Right, that's right.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And why is it important for people not only to actually vote for municipal judges, but to vote well?
Well, it's important to vote for judges, especially here in Hamilton County, where we have districts for the judges for municipal court. As you noted, we are in the 7th district, which is the westernmost part of Hamilton County, and the court was divided up, 2 judges per district, so that the people in the district could have representation. And in this case, in my case actually, I'm the only candidate who's lived here more than a few weeks or so. But I've lived in the district for many years with my family. My husband and I are raised in the 5th generation of West Siders. I wasn't born here, but I got here as quickly as I could. We've been in this house for 10 years. I coached my kids when they were at Dulles Elementary School in basketball. When they got to Rapid Run Middle School, they were a little too professional for me. So I left the coaching to someone else, but I brought the snacks, and I timed at their swim meets, and I went to the cross-country meets, and I volunteered with other families at the PTA things, functions, and the plays and everything else you go to in middle school, and then same thing's going on now that they're both in high school. So we're really part of the fabric of the community, and so that's one very important thing about voting for a judge who's representing a district. You should have someone from the district who knows the district, who's part of the district. And as far as the experience that a judge has, you want them to have a broad range of experience, not just handling one type of case or sitting on one side of the table all the time. You want someone with vast experience. I have that broad experience. As we've gone over my resume now a couple of times, you can see that I've handled many different types of cases. I've handled and I've represented many different types of people as well, all different socioeconomics, different skin color, different genders certainly, and different sexual orientation. And none of that matters to me, but I do have experience with all of these. So it's important to vote and know who you're voting for whom you're voting, actually.
Okay. And what do you think voters should consider when, I mean, you've answered that partly. I was going to ask you, let me finish my own sentence, right? What do you think voters should consider when they're voting for a judge? Now, you've already mentioned the judge should live in the district that they're going to represent.
Right.
What else is good to look at?
The broad range of experience. Does the judge have a broad range of experience? Have they handled cases in different areas of the law? Have they represented people on different sides of the table? These are all factors, and the more you have positive answers to that, the better. Because you want someone who's more apt to be able to relate to you if you come before the judge. So the broad range of experience is very important. And also, when someone handles one type of case for one party all the time, day after day after day, they can develop biases, whether they're aware or not. I'm not saying everyone does, but some people do, and that's what you want to try to avoid. I know if I become judge, I'm going to work very hard to avoid any biases. I want to judge everyone fairly and equally.
Okay. So you've mentioned wanting to avoid bias, treating everybody fairly and equally. Are there any other values that somebody should look for when voting for a judge?
Yes. I think especially progressive voters should be looking at people who have handled cases that move society in a positive direction. I, for instance, have handled cases with regard to domestic violence. So I think that helps society. The labor issues to help workers stand up when they're being treated unfairly, things like that. So you want someone who not only talks the talk but walks the walk, and I've done both.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. All right. Okay, so speaking very locally for Hamilton County, what are some of the most important issues municipal judges are going to face locally? There
are two huge issues, and probably everyone's going to answer. If you ask everybody at the courthouse, they're going to say the heroin opioid crisis and excuse me, and the overcrowding of jails.
Okay.
And they largely go hand in hand. But the opioid crisis, heroin crisis, it's a medical crisis and it has to be treated as such. The abusers need treatment. They need to get sober, and then they need to be put on a path or in a diversion program so that they are out of the pattern that got them into the using in the first place.
Okay.
As far as the overcrowding of the jails, we need to make sure that we're putting violent criminals behind bars, and where we can have a diversion and where it's appropriate, we use other diversion tactics. The monitoring, electronic monitoring, things like that, whenever it's possible.
All right. Could I ask a follow-up question about that?
No. Sorry.
No. Of course. But I'm worried that I'm going to ask a question that you can't ethically answer. So if I do, tell me.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've mentioned that people who are addicted to various substances, they need treatment.
Right.
Okay. So how can a court help with that?
Well, there are some programs you actually have to be sentenced. A defendant would have to actually be sentenced in order to go into the program to get them into the sober part and into a different kind of pattern so that they don't go back right into the same cycle.
Okay.
So sentencing is one big, huge part of that.
Okay. So through the sentencing guidelines, you can help them get on the right path?
That's our, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yes. That's the goal. Yes, to get them going down the right path.
Okay.
Now, of course, they have to participate and they have to admit or plea that they're guilty in the first place. Then you get them into the diversion program. If that diversion program is not successful, they will go back and they can serve up to their full sentence.
Okay.
But they can avoid the full sentence as long as they stay in the program and comply.
Okay.
As long as there's compliance.
Thank you. I didn't know that, so I'm glad I asked. Appreciate that. So we covered this a little bit, what your elected district is.
Yes.
But tell us what geographic area you would cover once elected.
Oh, the whole of Hamilton County.
The whole of Hamilton County.
Yes.
So if I understand correctly, a certain district elects you to make
Yes.
sure they have representation
That's
in the
right.
court system. But then you get cases all over the county?
Yes, that's correct.
Is that correct?
Right.
And where would your courtroom be?
In the Hamilton County Courthouse, which is 1000 Main Street, I believe is the address, but it's the downtown courthouse.
Downtown courthouse.
The big one, taking up
Okay.
the block.
So all the municipal judges?
Yes, all of them are there.
There?
14.
14?
2 per district.
Two
And
per
there are 7
district.
districts.
Okay. And are they all up for election this year?
No.
Okay, that's
They're
what I thought.
staggered.
I was like, but I didn't see that many candidates. Okay. And how do municipal court proceedings differ from higher court proceedings?
Well, there are 2 basic types of courts, those that hear the evidence and see witnesses, and those are the things you see on TV all the time. And then there are the appellate courts that don't take testimony from witnesses, but they review the witness's testimony as far as whatever's in the record. So they deal with, well, it used to be paper, now, whatever's on the screen. Those are the appellate. The Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court generally just do the review work. Lower courts, such as municipal court, Court of Common Pleas, handle the cases that most people are more familiar with, and you, as I said, see on TV, where evidence is presented and weighed, people testify, and that evidence that's considered and weighed as well. Then, as far as the type of jurisdiction for municipal versus Court of Common Pleas, municipal courts handle, did I already tell you this, up to starting at $500 to $15,000 controversies. So Court of Common Pleas would be above that,
Okay.
so higher. And then, whereas municipal court generally handles misdemeanors, the Court of Common Pleas handles felonies,
Okay.
so more than 6 months.
Do municipal courts have juries?
Yes.
Okay. And what about as far as attorney representation goes? They have, like we would see in a courtroom drama, are there attorneys on both sides?
People are entitled to attorneys in municipal courts, certainly. When they are indigent, can't afford an attorney, and there's a potential loss of liberty, that means they could serve jail time. If they qualify for indigency, then they could have a public defender appointed to them.
Okay.
So, yes, but they could always hire an attorney, assuming they have the means to do so.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
If I may also just tag
Oh,
on.
please.
Civil issues, of course, they don't involve the liberty, and they would not have a public defender
Okay.
for civil issues,
Right.
of course.
But they could hire their own attorney, is that
Yes.
correct? Okay. You can tell I'm still learning about the court system. Okay. How heavy is the current municipal court caseload? And this is a 2-part question, so tell me if you need me to repeat the second part. And how does the caseload affect how judges approach individual cases?
The caseload is very heavy in municipal court, and frankly, that's probably, if someone's going to get involved in the judicial system, it's probably going to be through the municipal court, because they do cover things like car accidents and things that are much more average. They're not the murder cases and things, which fortunately not everyone gets involved in. Let's see, what was the question? How does that affect the caseload?
How does the caseload affect how you handle an individual case?
Well, of course, I don't handle them yet. I'm hoping to become a judge, but if I become judge, I plan to handle cases. I want people to know that their time is important and respect them, their time, and show that I care about them, listen to their evidence, because I know if someone comes before me this is all important to them. This is their life. Even if it's an issue that I might see 100 times in 1 week, still, it's different to them. It's their facts. It's going to be different, so I'm going to listen to the evidence. I want to keep this court going smoothly and forward, moving the cases along, but still listen to the people and give them their opportunity in court. The caseload, still, we have to move things along, and to do so, I think it's important to have a set of procedures for your court where everyone knows to abide by those rules. So you have this much time to get the evidence in, or file the motions, and continuances are only granted on this kind of case, or under these circumstances. Not only set those rules, but abide by them. Be consistent in their application, and the staff and I will be consistent. So that when the staffer says, oh, the judge is only going to allow this, then the judge is really only going to allow that, because those are our rules that we follow. And that will keep cases moving along as well. Okay. And then the second part of the question?
That was it. You got it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you got it. Okay. Do we have any problems with our municipal court system that need to be addressed? And if so, how would you address those?
Yes, that's actually part of the reason largely the reason I'm throwing my hat in the ring on this one.
Okay.
Because I think there's unequal treatment of people, unequal sentencing, based on skin color, gender, and sexual orientation. And I want to help put a stop to that. It's part of why I became a lawyer, because I saw injustices and unfair treatment. I want to fairly and equally apply the law.
Okay.
I think that needs to be changed.
All right. Thank you. We have some live questions. Shall we?
Let's jump in.
Jump in? Yes. Okay. One thing that's already been answered, someone asked if you would hear cases only from District 7 or from all over Hamilton County. And just to reiterate that answer, it would be all over Hamilton County, right? Okay. Thank you for that question. What are your views on setting of bail, especially with regard to nonviolent offenses and the potential for unfairly holding people without the means to post bail? And there's a second question, but I'll let you answer that one first.
I think bail has to be considered in relation to the crime that was committed, the offense that was committed or alleged to have been committed. Sorry. It has to be reasonable, and it has to be proportionate to the ability to pay. We shouldn't have a bunch of people locked up and make it kind of a debtor's prison just because they don't have enough money. I'm not sure that's really the proper use of the term debtor's prison, but just because they're indigent, they shouldn't spend the weekend in jail when it was drunk driving or something. Well, they do have to get off the street for that. Maybe a bad example. But they shouldn't be jailed merely because they don't have enough money if it's for a nonviolent offense.
Okay. Or
My thoughts on that.
like they need to sober up before we put them back on the street.
Yeah, they're not a danger to society.
Okay. So you would take that in mind, or can you? Are there guidelines for bail that you have to abide by, or can you have some say in that?
I believe, and I'm not sure of what guidelines there are, but I believe the judge has great latitude in setting the bail.
Okay, and there's a follow-up question with that. Oh, here we go. I actually asked, what role does the judge play in equitable setting of bail? Do you want to elaborate on that at all, or have we? I think we pretty much covered it. Okay. If you have a follow-up question to that, please do add it in, and I'll ask. So we have some additional questions. Jeff Sessions has vowed to enforce tougher charging and sentence guidelines. How does this affect us locally, and what are your thoughts on this? Well, we don't enforce the federal laws. Really, we are in charge of enforcing the state and local laws. So I guess until they bring a judge here, and that's the federal courts, it's easy to say things like that. We're going to be tougher on this and we're going to be tougher on that. And you localities who aren't going to help us out, well, they're not pumping money to us to help them out necessarily.
for this cause or for that cause. So I think a lot of that's politicking, and I just don't see how it's really going to filter down to the Hamilton County courts.
Okay.
As far as that goes.
It sounds like good news to me. And one final question that we have so far. I have heard that judges are able to make their own hours and times for working, and this has caused a backlog in cases and some delays. Is this true? And what would you commit to if you are serving?
The judges actually do have a lot of latitude in setting their hours, and some have earlier case management conferences and whatnot, and start their hearings earlier rather than later. Some start at 9, some start at 8 or 8:30, and it just depends on the judge and what they like to do. And yes, there are some who I've heard try not to schedule things on Friday. But no, I'm expecting to work 40 hours a week like everybody. So, I mean, as long as the courthouse is open and we can get people there. Now, I have often thought that I'd want to start court hours early, 7:30, 8 o'clock, something like that. And then I started thinking about it. If you have to get people in who are on the bus system or something like that, or have to get their kids on the bus first, that may cause some problems. So I think you have to work that out, and also talking to other judges and see how they do things and what things have worked for them. But judges are largely in charge of their schedule, but of course how many cases they have pending can also be because of how many arrests have taken place, and that's something the judges, of course, have no control over.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Does that answer?
I think that answers the question. And if the person who has that question wants to follow up, of course you can. And I'm just going to take a moment and for those of you who have recently tuned in, let you know that I'm Nicole with Together We Will, Cincinnati, Southwest Ohio, and I'm here with Julia Collier, who's a candidate for Hamilton County Municipal Judge in District 7, right, but will be a municipal judge for the entire Hamilton County. And if you have a question, all you have to do is type it in the comments in the video feed, and it will be relayed to me here, and I will ask. Shall we proceed?
Sure.
Okay. So we're gonna jump to your background and your campaign. Okay. So what prompted you to become an attorney?
I wanted to help people. I wanted to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Mm-hmm. I saw unequal treatment of people, as I think I mentioned earlier, and I wanted to help stop that. I want to make a difference. Okay. So what were you exposed to that made you see the inequality in the way people were being treated, if I may ask? Oh, that's fine.
Okay.
Well, I'm one of 9 children. I have 6 brothers and 2 sisters. And in our household, everyone was treated equally. It didn't matter if you're a boy or a girl, you did the dishes, you did the laundry, you raked the yard, you cut the grass. Everyone's treated equally. And then when I went out a little into the world, even in 8th grade, my 8th grade teacher, when we had to do careers, I don't know if you had to do that, where you had to pick 2 careers that you wanted to be when you grew up and write a little about them. So you had to do some research to see what your goals in life are going to be, basically. And I wanted to be an FBI agent or an astronaut.
Okay.
Neither of which allowed women at the time. And my teacher said, "You can't do it." And I said, "What?" Because I said, maybe by the time I grow up, they'll allow women doing those things. No, she would not have it. So I had to go for an airline pilot and who knows whatever else I picked.
Women didn't used to be able to be teachers
isn't it
either.
Crazy? And in my middle school, I guess I had a traumatic middle school career. The girls' gym was actually the linoleum stage, the auditorium stage. That was our gym, where the boys had the really nice wooden floor where they have all the basketball games and everything like that. And I wrote a letter to the school board and my principal, and I said, I think the girls should have the gym, and we should also have a basketball team, because we didn't have a basketball team. We didn't even have intramurals. So they started intramurals, and I remember getting called to the office for that. Oh, man, I was sure I was going to get whacked, which meant you could get spanked.
Okay.
Back then.
I'm so glad that didn't mean assassinated. That what a relief.
That's before, well, I won't do that joke. Before women could do anything. But so there were things like that where I was treated differently just because of my gender, and I wasn't treated that way at home. There was no difference. There wasn't. There weren't differences. And then I also saw my father, who was a Teamster. He was also a veteran of World War II. He was he survived the invasion at Normandy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's a wonderful. He was a wonderful man. My mother was absolutely wonderful as well. But they taught us to treat everyone equally and also with respect. Mm-hmm. So in my formative years, some things happened that I saw, and then of course I read the newspaper and saw the inequality outside where I lived.
Oh, awesome.
Thanks.
And isn't it nice when somebody has excellent parents?
Yes.
Yes.
They were the best. And I'm sure other people have the best parents too. They were wonderful, wonderful people. Giving, selfless, wonderful people.
Oh, good.
Thanks.
I'm glad to hear that. All right. So the next question on the list, you may have answered partially, but I'm going to ask anyway and see if you have anything to add. What appeals to you about being a judge?
What appeals to me about it? I don't know that I ever would have framed it as appeals, but I threw my hat in the ring because I wanted change. And the times have not been changing enough, and I'm afraid the pendulum may even be swinging backward a little bit. I don't want that to happen, so I'm going to do my part. I'm not going to sit around and mope about it or whine about it. I need to get up and get active. I think that it's time to actually do things and walk the walk. It's time to walk the walk.
We're with you on that.
Thank you.
We are.
Thank you.
Yes. And do you have any specific judicial philosophies that you'd like to share with us?
I think it comes back to, and I know I've said this already, but treating people with respect and knowing that this is their day in court. This is probably the first time they've had contact with the judiciary. And I want it to be a positive contact. I did meet someone while I was campaigning, an elderly woman who had had a burglary at her house, and she said she just had it with the courts because she went to court 2 or 3 times, I'm not sure what she said, and she waited around for 2 or 3 hours each time, and then she would be sent home. And she said the second time she was there, the judge said, I have a more important matter to take care of, and sent them away after they had waited 2 or 3 hours, she and her husband. And going downtown for the elderly sometimes is a big deal anyway. Than to sit around the whole time and wait and not be told this is what's happening or something like that. I know things like that will happen, and I know things like that will justifiably happen. But how you handle it, and even if the judge had spoken to them directly, probably in person, it would have gone a long way to make them, make them feel better and make them feel respected. But their time, you have to be respectful of the people's time who are coming before you, whether it's the attorneys who are coming or the witnesses or the defendants or the plaintiffs, whoever coming before you. If I can, I want to try not to have a big cattle call at 9 o'clock so that people do wait around till 11 o'clock to be heard. If it's possible, I'm going to be changing it to 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, so it's staggered. So we make better use of the time, and so that people can come in even to the courthouse in a staggered manner, because I don't know if you've ever been to the courthouse at 8:30 in the morning, but the line is out the door. It doesn't matter if it's snowing or raining or anything else, but they all have to go through the metal detector, and they're out the door standing. Partly because everybody has to get there before 9 o'clock.
I see.
So it all slows down. So if we can work some things out to actually serve the public better, I'll try to do that.
All right, great. Thank you. We have another live question. You have discussed people being treated differently due to race, gender, etc. There's a lot of discussion around the prisons being disproportionately filled with African Americans. What
true.
are your thoughts on this, and what can you do or will you do to change this?
Well, there are several things, and I think we've touched on them actually. As far as I want to treat people equally, so not by the color of your skin that you'll be judged, but by the facts of the case. That's number one important. I can't control who the police bring in, but as far as applying the law equally and fairly, I can do that. That would be my job. And another thing is, if we were, I believe it holds true that generally minorities can make up more of the lower socioeconomic level, and if they're in jail because they couldn't bond out for something, a minor offense or something, I can do something about that and not have them sit there just because they don't have money. Because when they do that, if they're sitting in jail because they can't bond out, they might be losing their job, and then it's just getting them further and further and further in the hole, and that's a problem. We shouldn't be doing that. It doesn't matter what your skin color is. We need to stop that.
Okay, thanks. And thank you for your questions. We really appreciate them. If you have any more, please ask. The next question on our list is something that we've already actually talked about, which is drug offenders. But I'll ask you anyway and see if there's anything you'd like to add to your previous response. And that is, what approach will you take with drug offenders, including those who commit crimes motivated by addiction?
Well, there's the line. As far as drug abusers need treatment, and get them off that path of the cycle to going back into drugs and drug use. But it's when they cross the line of actually committing some violent crimes or things like that, that adversely affects not only them and their victim, but also the community. And nothing can deteriorate a community faster than the stores wanting to pull out because there's too much breaking and entry, burglaries, and things like that. That just brings the whole neighborhood down very quickly, and it also adversely affects people's sense of security. So you don't want that either. So there has to be some penalty applied when someone goes further than just abusing drugs.
Okay. So you're saying, if I understand correctly, that there are people who come before municipal court judges on strictly charges of substance abuse. Yes. And then there are people who come before judges who are substance abusers who have committed crimes related to their substance abuse issues. And if I understand correctly, you're saying that people who are just there as substance abusers can be directed toward treatment programs, whereas people who've committed crimes in relation to that, there has to be some kind of penalty. Am I understanding correctly?
Well, that would be my position. That doesn't mean there has to be. The judge has great latitude.
Okay.
But I would want to steer away if it's just drug abuse as much as I could, if we can really get them into a program and get them on a better path. But as far as the violent crimes and when they're taking it to, they're doing things to support their drug habit and interfering with other people's rights and security, that's when I think penalties need to be applied.
Okay, thank you. All right, appreciate that. This is a related question. These are going to be a couple of drug-related questions here. Do you feel prisons are adequately dealing with the problem of addiction?
I don't think they can. And I don't think any one agency can. The courts can't do it alone. The prisons can't do it alone. And I don't think they're necessarily set up for that. And certainly not in this number that they're having to deal with now. But it's also affecting children. And ODJFS, I know, is being overwhelmed with problems all relating to that are stemming from the drug problems. And high schools are trying to deal with things and trying to have programs to have people or kids stay away from drugs and things. it's going to take our whole community, it's going to take our whole state and our whole nation to really get hold of this. And wouldn't this be a great thing to unite behind? Let's all get together, because it's our future we're talking about here. So are they handling everything really well? I don't think they can. They can't do it alone. They can't. So we all have to help. And again, that's part of the walk the walk.
Now, you said an abbreviation, OD...
Oh, ODJFS.
JFS, okay.
Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services.
Okay, okay. I didn't know that one, so I wanted to clarify that in case there were other people watching who also didn't know it. So thank you. And then when should drug offenses be punished, and when should they be addressed with treatment? I think we've touched on this.
Right. I think I've said it. Basically, drug abuse, let's try to get them in there, get them into a program, preferably some diversion program, and so they're monitoring. But as long as they comply, then all is well. But if they don't comply, that's when there are problems.
Okay, all right. We have a couple live questions. One is, do you have any examples of when you have encountered your own biases, we all have them, and changed your mind about something or someone?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
That is a tough one. Do you want to think about it and come back to it, or do you want to go ahead?
I'll tell you. Yeah, I know one.
Okay.
I do know one.
Okay. Do you feel comfortable sharing it?
It's not a happy thing, but I will. When I was younger and I thought about if I was going to be a business owner, I would only want to have really healthy people who worked out because they're less apt to be injured, and they're more, I believe they would be more productive and whatnot. And someone said, well, you're being prejudiced to people who don't, and maybe people of different body types and things. And I said, no, I'm not. At first, no, I'm not. But I went home that evening, and yeah, I was prejudiced. And that doesn't mean that someone with a different body type or workout habits, or no workout habits at all, doesn't have a lot to offer and a lot to give, and are just as productive. And, it doesn't matter whether you work out or not. If you're going down the stairs, you can trip and fall. You could twist your ankle. You can strain your back or whatever. So, yes, it was pointed out to me, and I did have to admit, yeah, I was doing that. And so I do try to catch myself. I do think about things like that. Am I treating people differently? And I think it's easy to treat people differently. You just have to work really hard not to treat people differently.
I've heard that your first response doesn't, your gut response doesn't really reflect who you are. It's your considered response after you've realized your gut response and then corrected it. That is what really matters. That's what I've heard. Another question that came in, you've mentioned diversion programs. Can you say more about what those are?
I actually don't have. I've been to seminars where they've discussed them, and frankly, I am not well read on those, and I'm not up to date. It's been a couple of years or so since I went in, but I did go to a continuing legal education 2-3 years ago, and several of the judges from Hamilton County came in and spoke about the different programs they have. So I'm not the expert on those, but I will be learning more.
Okay. All right. Well, you know that you have people who are interested, so
thanks.
Yeah.
And I also hope that I spoke properly on, I think we talked about how the diversion programs and, coming back to sentencing and things like that. I hope that was all accurate. That was my recollection from the seminars I took some time ago.
All right.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So code violations have been a big topic locally lately. Do municipal judges hear cases having to do with code violations?
They do.
Okay. And Do you believe homeowners should be arrested and or serve jail time for code violations?
Now,
Or under what circumstances might be a better question?
well, there's the health and safety aspect of things. And generally speaking, no, I don't want to see people locked up because there are code violations. But the question becomes what happens when there's a real health risk or safety risk. And Judge Greenberg, I believe, in municipal court handles the housing cases and handles a lot of the code issues. And he's written articles about that as well. You don't want to have an unsafe apartment building or something like that, or where there's people going without water or something. It's not just a crumbling step and nothing really big. Those people should be treated differently if they're property owners who aren't taking care of rental properties, and it's other people who are being harmed. I could see that they might be treated a little differently, or much differently than someone who's a homeowner who just doesn't quite have the funds to take care of a fence or something like that, or even get their grass cut. There's certainly a big difference between getting grass cut and a wall that's going to fall down, a retaining wall that's going to fall down and go onto the sidewalk and potentially hurt somebody. Now, as far as how do we take care of these situations, I think that I'd hope that there would be some community outreach that might be able to help to a degree. And of course, when I talk about the landlords who are collecting money for the properties, I would expect they would be making money and they should be able to fix things. So I would expect a harsher penalty, and I also expect compliance a little faster. But the code violations, it generally takes several notices to the property owner. It's not something that you get one notice and if you don't fix it right away, you're going to be locked up. It's not like that. It takes quite a while for the process to work.
All right.
As long as that's not a big safety issue or not an emergency kind of thing.
Right. So like peeling paint, for instance, should take some time.
Right. Or the color that doesn't match the decor of the area, if it's a historical area or something like that, that only has certain paint colors or something like that.
Oh,
that'd be very different.
That's a code violation issue?
It could be.
Matching paint?
There are some areas of town that does have, these are the types of colors you could have on your house. Yeah.
Okay then. So we have about 10 minutes left. So if you have any questions for Julia Collier, try and get them in now so we can make sure we ask before we run out of time. You said something I want to follow up on. You said Judge Greenberg handles a lot of the code violations.
Yes.
So do the judges split up responsibilities in terms of what kind of cases they hear?
I don't know how they do it, but I do know he is, I think it's called the housing court. I think it's the housing court that he's handles. So I don't know if part of his docket is set aside just for hearing those types of cases. But also Judge Melissa Powers, now she's gone on to another court, I think juvenile court. She handled veterans court, so veterans cases came before her largely. And I don't know how they docket those as opposed to other cases. And I assume since they're handling perhaps a majority, I don't think they could handle all, but if they handle a vast majority of those cases, then the rest of their docket would be lightened, I would imagine, so that the judges all pull their weight. I'm not sure how that's handled exactly.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you. So a follow-up on the code violation question is, how can we ensure people care for their property but not under the threat of arrest? Is there a better solution? And if so, what might that be?
And on that, I don't think the courts can do anything about that, but their community outreach, there are different organizations who would help. I even have thought, does Habitat for Humanity have an arm or a branch that actually helps homeowners do things? to keep up instead of just create this new house for somebody, but keep up with things that go wrong or that need mending and stuff. So I don't know if there's an agency out there. I know Scouts help. Even high schools have students, they give community service hours to students for National Honor Society and things like that. So I don't know if there's something like that available, or church organizations who may volunteer to do things. But I think it's really, I think the community needs to step up and help each other.
Okay, all right. We touched a little bit on racial disparities in the judicial system. So do you have any specific policies in mind that would help address that?
Policies? The only thing I can think of, again, is the handling of cases and making sure you have procedures, and they are the procedures for everybody. That someone from this side of town doesn't get something different from this side than from someone from this side of town, or something like that. And then the equal application of the law. Okay,
all right. And we're down to our last few questions. I'll try and get them in here before we run out of time. What is the current role of plea bargains in municipal court?
I think they're an integral part of municipal court. Plea bargains, of course, are where the people agree to a lesser penalty, or basically they're negotiating what their sentence will be. And it's important because it keeps the cases moving along. If we were to have a trial on everything, there'd be a huge backlog. But this way, people don't feel that they're necessarily gambling. They know what they're going to get, what sentence, if any, they're going to have, instead of possibly getting the maximum sentence and disrupting their lives even further. Some people are willing to take that chance and others are not. And it's very important to note that for plea bargains, nobody's forced to take a plea bargain. It's voluntarily entered into, and many judges ask several times throughout the process, do you make this plea bargain voluntarily, and make sure they understand, that the defendant understands, and are still willing to go through with it.
All right. That ties into the follow-up question on this, which is, do you feel defendants are pushed toward plea bargains more than they should be?
I honestly don't know. I'm sure some people feel pushed, but the question is, do they want to do it or not? And the only way a judge can ensure the best they can is to ask time and time again, are you doing this, entering into this voluntarily? I mean, the person has to be able to stand up for themselves as far as say, yes, or I do want this. I am voluntarily doing this. But I'd like to think that my colleagues who represent them, assuming they're represented, aren't pushing them, maybe giving them the facts, and they may not be the facts they want to hear, the chances of this versus the chances of that. And there's no attorney, I wouldn't expect, would ever say, this is what's going to happen. Exactly, you're going to get this or going to get that, but the chances are there that you'll get this or that, maybe. So, no, I don't think it's excessive. I think it's human nature to want to know what's going to happen. It might be fun at the tables to throw cards down and see if you're going to win or lose, but I don't think many people want to do that with their liberty.
Okay. And I think that we're just about wrapped up, but before we go, so we're fairly new at asking questions of judicial candidates. Would you recommend any questions that we missed?
I guess other than the bio, and I guess you did ask more about, you asked me to go into the details of some of my work. I think that's important because you do want to know what kind of cases people have handled for judges, and have they represented people on both sides of the table, as I have. So you want to, truly, I think it's very important for judicial candidates to have a broad range of experience. So to ask questions to kind of pull that out is important.
All right.
I think.
Oh, great. Thank you. Good feedback. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
So again, I'm Nicole with Together We Will of Cincinnati and Southwest Ohio, and I'm here with Julia Collier, who has graciously spent her time with us this evening answering questions about her candidacy for Hamilton County Municipal Judge. Thank you again for being here.
Thank
you
you
for being here. Thank you for your questions. I'm going to wrap up, and we will see you next time.
Thank you all.